antitrust big tech hearing today. What did we learn? What do we know? Where does the big tech conversation move from here?
So the Antitrust Subcommittee will be issuing a report next week. It may be bipartisan, it may not be. We haven't had a chance to read the report at this point. I think what we learned today was that the experts, the professors, the former regulators, the people who really study this area see a problem with high tech and the anti-competitive behavior of at least 5 of the platforms in high tech. We also learned that while most return on capital for most industries has stayed pretty stagnant for the last 50, 60 years, big pharma and high tech have really exploded. And we've got to make sure that we keep high tech competitive so that smaller, innovative companies can compete.
There's been so many conversations just about freedom of speech, as well as just how big these tech companies are and how they're able to navigate Section 230, for example. Where does that fall into this, especially as you get ready to release your report?
So I think there are issues that are more talked about on the left and more talked about on the right. And bias and the regulation of speech on these platforms is certainly talked about a lot by conservatives because they feel like they're being discriminated. I should say we feel like we are being discriminated against. On the left, they talk about the size of these companies and the danger of having companies that are that big. My view is that if we do the right thing with reducing the anti-competitive behavior of these companies, we will see an impact on free speech. We have a lot of different sources of TV and a newspaper for our information. We don't complain about bias in those areas because we know when we look at one or the other, we're going to get a different viewpoint. It's when one platform controls and there's no other platform that can give a different viewpoint that we really have a problem.
Are subpoenas going to be necessary?
I think the investigation side at this point is over because we're dealing with a new Congress starting January 3rd. And so what we're going to see are probably some legislative proposals that will be made in the November-December timeframe. And then really in January 3rd, the results of this investigation will move forward depending on who controls the White House, who controls the Senate, who controls the U.S. House.
You know, you look at some of within the big tech industry, you've got Spotify and other companies engaging in an alliance, for lack of a better term, in terms of going after some of these big tech companies on their app platforms and just where apps are placed. I mean, how do you navigate the quickly evolving world of technology and keep pace with it? And this is something that conservatives have been talking about for forever, and keep pace with that evolving world and also make sure that it's fair for small business and entrepreneurs to create more anew.
Yeah, I think what's really essential is to understand the separation of powers in our government. Congress's role is to make sure that the executive branch has the resources they need to move forward and that the laws are applicable to the current economy. If we do those two things, that's our job. We can't say that this company should be broken up or that the remedy should be this particular remedy for this situation.
I want to switch gears now just to go geopolitical for a second. It's one thing to look at the domestic big tech companies. It's entirely different to look at China's big tech companies and the infiltration that they have and penetration that they're having, not just in the U.S. marketplace, but also in Europe as well as all around the world. What does the U.S. need to be doing to make sure that our own intellectual property is protected from the Communist Party of China?
Well, I think we need to do two things. One, regardless who the president is, we need to make sure that if China bars U.S. companies from entering its marketplace, like Google, like Amazon, like some other high-tech companies, we need to make sure we take reciprocal action and that China doesn't have a free pass with TikTok or other apps in this country when they're barring us. So the first thing is fair trade policy. The second thing is we need to do a lot better job, and the world needs to do a lot better job of protecting intellectual property from China. They have been predators, they have cheated in the marketplace, and we need to get a consensus around the world that China has to come into the free and fair trade areas and not allow them to continue to cheat.
It's a fascinating debate. Finally, Speaker Pelosi, Secretary Mnuchin, are we going to get to some type of fiscal stimulus before the election?
I hope we do, and I hope that it is as small as possible, and yet it takes into account those who are unemployed and hurting and those small businesses that really need a hand at this point. What we can't do is the blue state bailout that Speaker Pelosi is talking about right now. We cannot continue to try to fund state governments who have been acting irresponsibly.